Hi, I want to introduce this session around a heartful leader, and later we'll be chatting with Shantanu Gupta, who is a well-known author and has written a book about the monk who became CM. And he'll share with us some insights about heartful leadership and draw lessons from the famous Ramayana, the story of Lord Rama, which has a top spot, I would say, in Indian mythology and in Indian religious literature. As a tee up, I want to share with you a couple of things. When you think about what a heartful leader is, there are three aspects that come to mind, right? Self-awareness, how aware is a person and how do they manage their inner state? And then, what's the mindset when you show up, whether it's in an organization, in an interaction with your colleagues, or you're going through a tough situation, confrontation, competition? How do you show up? What's that mindset that a heartful leader has? And finally, emotional intelligence and also ethical intelligence. How do you hold your moral compass together when the going gets tough? And how do you deal with situations where you have to control your own anger or your own fear, get over hurdles that are challenging? So these three aspects we'll explore deeper. And as part of that, I also want to share with you a framework that is useful when you think about a heartful leader. And that framework is starting with that self-awareness. A heartful leader is able to manage their own inner state so that their outer behavior is what they want it to be. In other words, if they get angry, they're able to regulate that anger. If they create in their own mind illusions about something that doesn't exist. For example, I'm about to meet my boss for a performance review, and I start creating these stories in my head about how badly it's going to go. If I'm able to check myself and say, no, I'm creating these illusions and wipe them clean, that's another example of self-awareness and managing that inner state. When a heartful leader does this, their outer behavior improves drastically. So other people see that they behave well under all circumstances, not just good circumstances. And when they do that, this naturally creates trust. And when people trust you, then your relationships with them start becoming better. So a heartful leader tends to be somebody who, in the organization that they work in, tend to build a lot of trust and tend to build very good relationships. And what trust and relationships result in is that they have a reputation which becomes so strong that people who they don't personally know are also willing to do things for them just because they have that reputation. We all know these leaders that we look up to, and it's all by reputation. You've heard something about them. You've heard, for example, Saroj is always fighting for her people and she'll go to the ends of the earth to defend them. When you hear that about Saroj, now you want to do something for her as a team member, even though you may not know her personally. So this is an example of reputation. Eventually, reputation is what provides influence, and influence is what lets a leader create outcomes. So we'll dive more into this and get some insights from Ramayana, from Sri Shantanu Gupta. Shantanu ji, first of all, thank you for joining us and doing this session with us. And on behalf of the Heartfulness Institute, it's a pleasure to have you and to get your perspectives on what a heartful leader is. Just by way of introduction, my name is Ravi Venkatesan. I serve as CTO at a public company called Cantaloupe in Atlanta. I grew up in Delhi, and I've been practicing heartfulness meditation for 26 years, and just very, very passionate about, how InsideOut transformation can help leaders. And it's my honor and privilege to get your perspective and ask you some questions about this topic. Do you have any opening comments about our audience that will listen to this?
Ravi ji, namaskar. I'm talking to you from Noida, Uttar Pradesh, next to Delhi, capital of India. And I also heard about heartful meditation. I'm also a disciple of Kriya Yoga. So I do my regular meditation in the morning. And that helps in a lot of other things. My spiritual journey is being one, but also in my material life also, right? So all the ideas that I imbibe during my meditative journey, how I can translate those in my material world relationships, right? So I want to do that, right? As I think we were discussed that I do something called lessons from Ramayana, right? And there can we bring a lot of this modern heartful leaders lessons from Sri Ramchandraji's life. And that's the topic I want to discuss today with your audience.
That is absolutely wonderful. The story of Ramayana, one of two major epics for us, anybody who grew up in India, including Mahabharata being the other one, of course. And I just remember this, I remember my grandmother once telling me that, Lord Krishna is an avatar who came with all his powers and all his glory. But the real avatar or Purna avatar is Lord Rama, because he actually lived the human condition and dealt with the human problems. And he did not have that so-called magic, right from the beginning. And in a way, he suffered, right? His life was full of suffering, and in a way he suffered, and so showed humans, or showed us, how to deal with that. And in that sense was very inspiring. What's your perspective on how he dealt with a crisis? And as aspiring heartful leaders, how can we learn from, he got married and immediately he got into this situation where he had to leave his throne, his kingdom, go out into the jungle. What lessons can we draw from his character and his approach to that situation?
Right. So Raviji, in our sessions, which are normally spanning 5 days, 6 days, 10 days workshop, we try to break the whole of Ramayana into small conversations happening between two characters. And we'll try to see, can we bring out a lesson which is relevant even today? So because you mentioned the word crisis, and which is quite a jargon in today's corporate word and normal word also, that we are moving from one crisis management to another crisis management. And I normally bring it this example when Sri Ramchandra was very young. So it so happened he was born and he was getting trained with Rishi Vashishta in Ayodhya, right, in the Gurukul. And then comes Rishi Vishwamitra from outside and says, I want Ram and Lakshman to come with me. And when his father asked why, he said to kill Talaka, to kill Marish, to kill Subau. And Dashrath got shock of his life. He says, they are not even 15, 16. You take me, you take my army, but I can't send my young boys for killing Talaka, for Marish and Subau. But somehow Rishi Vashisht, who was the Kulguru of Ayodhya, convinced Darshathji that, okay, no, you should send, because it's almost like a graduation for them. Till now, they were only doing like classroom sessions, right, with me. Now they will do a practical session. And a teacher like Rishi Vishwamitra coming to your door is like an awesome thing, right? Normally, you go and find a good guru, good teacher for you, and he's coming, right? And see, he can destroy this demon himself. So if he's coming to ask your help, it means there's a larger purpose for you in it rather than him, right? So he sent, and then the next scene in Ramayana is the Talaka standing in front. This huge, gigantic, demoness Talaka standing in front, and Vishwamitra says, okay, go ahead and eliminate her. And okay, Ramchandraji, who is 16 as per Valmiki Ramayana, then he takes best of his arrows, aims at Talaka, and he says, no, I cannot shoot at her. And Vishwamitra said, why on the face of earth? Come on, that's the purpose I brought you in. He said, no, she's a woman. And I'm being told not to hurt a woman. And it's almost like a Arjuna-like crisis from which we got the jewel of Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, right? And then there's almost like a mini Bhagavad Gita happening here, right? Not that profound, but again, so there's a conversation between Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra and Ramchandraji is happening. So I think the important point to notice that a crisis like Talaka is standing in front. That the first crisis he faced in life, like real-time crisis, right? Earlier he was getting trained in an artificial setting, right? And Talaka will not wait for long. Like if you will not eliminate her, she will eliminate you, right? And but his morality compass still on. If he has learned that I'll not hurt a woman, I'll not hurt a woman, right? And then Vishwamitraji says that, okay, boy, you're right. Even I teach my students, my disciples the same thing, not to hurt a woman. But Talaka is only in the body of a woman. She doesn't have the qualities of the woman. She doesn't have the daya, karuna, mamta, the compassion, the motherhood feeling of a woman. She kills children. She kills women. She kills men. She destroys pujas, the scientific activities. She destroys rishis. And then when with a lot of counter questions and questions, when Rama's morality got satisfied, then only launched the arrow. Right? But today, normally, I think for us, we have seen that, okay, my moral and good behavior is reserved for good days, right? On crisis, I'll solve it the way I want, right? Because it's a crisis. How can I not solve it, right? That's why I'm saying, Raviji, that Ramayana is a gold standard in morality. It's not what do you say, a go-to book for any crisis, right? So, but again, there are good examples also, and I keep referring. I do a session on entrepreneurship lessons of Ramayana, and whenever I ask which company is in Indian scene, which company is considered the most ethical company, right? On my screen, by and large, people say Tata. So that's why I'm trying to say even ethical sense can also make a business sense, because people say, no, it's not practical to be value laden, to be ethics laden every time, right? Because that's not in the best of the interest, corporate interest or personal interest, right? But I keep saying, like I keep giving the Tata example, right? Cliched one, but very important, that all of you, 30 participants and 29 have written Tata. I have not told you, right? Why? Because are they not good in business? Are they not cracking business after business? They are, like, as they say, from Tata salt to Tata truck, right? Or Tata consulting services, right? From softwares, right? A lot of banks. And ethics being part of Tata's work culture is like very institutional to them, and they're also successful. So it's not that following ethics and following heartfulness, following trust, relationship, you can't be materially successful, right? And that's also can be communicated. So yeah, and Rama was successful. Today, after 14,000 years of him being happening on earth, we are talking about him, right? So I think that's how he managed the crisis, that he made sure that his values, his morality, his learnings will not go for a toss when he's solving a crisis. He's saying, I will make sure my morality is satisfied, then only I will go for whatever action I have, be it I may be eliminated by Talaka, or be it I'll get stuck in the problems that the crisis will unfold, right? So yeah, sorry, a long story for a short question.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
That's excellent insight. What I'm taking away from it is it's very easy to have your moral compass with you, and the times are easy when things are,
the times are easy, right.
But it's when the going gets tough, and in the toughest situations, my dad used to say, it's time to grow a backbone. Exactly. Those are the times when your mettle is tested, is when the consequences are there and still you stand up for your values. And I think that's an incredible lesson, and thank you for that. I want to shift a little bit to situations where, the best of leaders, we still make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, and I've always been fascinated by how there are people that have what we call the ostrich syndrome, right? They bury their head in sand and then they try to pretend those mistakes didn't happen. And there seem to be people that are incredible at looking at those mistakes, putting a big magnifying glass on them, learning the right lessons, but not dwelling on them and just moving on. And there seems to be a role that the heart plays, back to the whole heartful leader concept, in that evaluation, in that sort of, in Hindi, we call it tatolna, and, introspection, or whatever you call it. And there is no doubt that in Lord Rama's life, he makes some mistakes along the way as well. and what lessons can we draw from his approach to those, and how he and his brother Lakshmana learn from them and adapt their approach?
Yeah, I think good. I'm happy that we Indians come from a culture where blasphemy is not internalized, right? We can still critically engage with the text like Ramayana, right? So even a mistake of Rama, right, can be discussed, and that's a lovely thing, right? So I'll bring out 2, 3 very quick examples which I'll find we can learn from them. So and luckily, I think the story is also in continuation after the Talaka elimination. Then comes Marich and Subahu, right? So Subahu and the other gang was eliminated, but the arrow that he fired on Marich was not powerful enough, right? Marich was just thrown away, though he got eliminated for time being, but he was alive, right? He was not eliminated for forever, right? He was just thrown away. And if you and your readers remember, Marich does come back. Marich does come back in the form of a golden deer, right? So a problem called Marich, which was tiny earlier, when delayed, became a larger problem. So can I keep solving my problems just by delaying them? Okay, delaying, okay, postponing as a strategy is fine. But if I'm just delaying it consciously, can I just solve them because I'm just maybe closing my eyes or just moving away from the situation? But every time it's not, at many times you have to face it and to solve it, to move it ahead. So keep in mind, if you will not solve the marichis of your life permanently, they will come back in the form of golden deer and became a larger marich. And golden deer marich became the reason for Mata Sita's kidnap, right? Or the bigger thing, right? So this is one, right? So don't procrastinate. Solve it then and there, right? That's one. Another, see, the whole Ram Ravana Yuddha, the premise is the cutting of nose and ears of Surbankha, right? That's how the whole thing started, right? And how did it happen? Surbankha comes to Rama and say, I want to marry you. Then goes to Lakshmana, I want to marry you. Then she sees Sita and she thinks, I'm just hurrying it up. And then she sees Sita and says, oh my God, this is the lady because of which I'm getting into trouble. And she attacks, right? And Lakshmana gets so outraged that he, in the revenge, cuts the nose and ears. And then she goes to Ravana and all of that happened, right? But could Lakshmana have handled this differently? Could he have just, and this is the reason from where the war started, right? Could Lakshmana could have just scared her away, shouted her away, maybe pushed her away, anything logistically possible, right? But he got so angry that he have cut the nose and ears of Surpankhara, right? And Lakshmana could have realized that, okay, he's a leader himself, and every small and big action of a leader has to be calculated, right? You can't just do your normal reflex to any action that's coming up to you, right? So, and that's a good lesson, that okay, can you modestly respond to even anger or to a adverse situation, even want to adversely respond it, can that adverse response can also be calculated. That's one. Another important character, three very important character, Ramji, Lakshmanji, and Sitaji. I think Sitaji again, and she learned within Ramayana's story also that when Rama went to jungle behind the golden deer Marich, right? Lakshmana drawn a boundary, Lakshman Rekha. Don't cross it. Don't cross it, whatever may come. But did she follow the rule? She did not. Sure. Right. The reason might be different. Did she follow the and who got into trouble? She got into trouble, right? So this basic essence that okay, rules are for you, your parents, your teachers, your governments, right? Be it social distancing, mask, sanitizing in current Corona times. I think they're for your own good, right? And you have to make this thin line between trust and judgment, right, while deciphering this. And Sita Mata corrects herself very quickly when Hanumanji comes to meet her, and though she's quite certain by the stories that Hanumanji is telling that he is the right messenger, she says, no, I don't agree. I just got tricked by Ravana 8-9 months back. You have to prove that you are sent by you are indeed sent by Rama. And then came the first ever concept of passwords in humanity, and the password called human ring came. It was okay, I'm carrying a key that you then you can establish, and that with that unique key, she established that Hanumanji is sent by Rama, and this time she's using her judgment and not trusting blindly, which she did earlier, right? She corrected herself, right? So there are a lot of instances in Ramayana where we can see even this super perfect characters like Rama, like Lakshman, like Sita. They did some mistakes, and even we, the humans, can also learn from them.
Yeah, that's beautiful insight. In Heartfulness, one of the concepts we have is that as you go through this journey, the spiritual journey, the first phase of it is all about learning to balance opposites, which are things like greed versus contentment, and peace versus restlessness, fear versus courage, clarity versus illusion. It's described in the Gita also, right? Those 5 stages. And it's so fascinating that the examples you highlighted correspond to those. Lord Rama's postponement in many ways is his, where he had to balance compassion versus action, courage, the action that he had to take, and ended up kicking the can down the road. In Lakshmana's case, it was anger, that the regulation of that anger, which is the other opposite there, anger versus being compassionate. And then in Sita's case, it was illusion. It was clarity versus illusion. So it's amazing that these opposites, or dvandvas as we call them, apply, and the lessons, the mistakes that were made were not the right balance with them. That's awesome. Shantanu ji, I wanted to go a little bit into deeper territory, let's say, in terms of some things that have always been puzzling for me. In most religions, especially the Anglo-Judaic religion, the examples are fairly black and white. When you look at a godly figure, they are always doing the right thing, and they're always, in a very black and white manner, held up as that role model. Whereas in Indian tradition, especially Hindu, and particularly when you study the life of Lord Krishna and all the things he did, but also some things with Lord Rama, the Vali episode being an example, sometimes you wonder, do the means really justify the end? And as a leader, do you adopt means that may seem unethical or immoral even, because of a higher purpose? And how do you look at that? What's your viewpoint on that?
So I think among Ramayana scholars, there are 2-3 most contested, debated incidents of Ramayana, and Bali Vad, the Bali's elimination, is one of them. And why so? I think for the larger audience who may not know the nuances of Bali Vad, so to help Sugriva to get the kingdom back, Rama eliminated Bali. That's one. So Rama did not have a direct problem with Bali otherwise, right? He never picked up a fight with Bali. So that's first problematic thing, that why he killed Bali. And second, he has hidden himself behind a tree to kill Bali, right? And these two things, for a big follower of Maryada Purushottam Ram, it's a little troubling, right? Okay, my Maryada Purushottam Ram, how can he use trick, right? For Krishna's case, they are very evident, right? These tricks are very evident, and by that time we have traveled to Dwapar also. From Treta we have traveled to Dwapar. In fact, you see, the whole Mahabharata war is a mind game between Krishna this side and Shakuni that side, right? Rest all is just the mechanization of that mind wars, right? And before the war, there's a beautiful conversation between Shakuni. Sorry, I'm digressing a little bit and come back to Ramayana. There is a beautiful conversation between Shakuni and Krishna, right? Because they know, and both of them know that this side is Krishna, this side is Shakuni, who is playing this whole mind game, right? And Shakuni says, I'm going to win this war. Krishna says, no, you're not. I'm going to win this war. I means my side, right? And Shakuni says, but how will you kill a Bhishma? How will you kill a Dronacharya? How will you kill a Karna? Right? And on the face, Krishna says, I will kill all of them by trick. And Shakuni gets aghast, says, no, how can you use trick? You are like the epitome of dharma, right? How can you do that? And that's my biggest That's my biggest, tool, that I will pose adharma on you and you will never revolt against it. You will never go adharmic, and that's how I win, right? He say, no, for the larger purpose, I will make sure that I may have to use some adharmic techniques to establish the larger seat of dharma, right? So that's there. Coming back to Ramayana, so this thing happened. He has sent Sugriv for a bout with Bali. He has sent Sugriv with a garland so that he can identify, because both of them looked quite identical. And hiding behind a tree, he launched an arrow on Bali, and the arrow went right in the heart of Bali. Bali is almost dying. Rama goes to him, and Bali asked two very logical questions to Rama. And this is a classic conversation in a dying Bali and Rama is talking, right? Dying Bali is saying, okay, you killed me, that's fine, but we don't even know each other. How can you pick up a fight without someone who don't even know, right? You have to at least know, enter into altercation, enter into a dispute, and then you pick up a fight and then you kill or don't kill someone, right? Why did you kill me? Like, we don't even know each other. This is the first time we're seeing each other, right? And second, okay, if you want to kill me, like, come as a warrior. Why you're hiding behind a tree, right? And then in my classes, I give this idea of 3 J's, and that's the conversation happening between Rama and Bali. And it's not that we have to get convinced, Raviji. Bali should be convinced, and he got convinced, right? And what are the 3 J's that Rama is telling to Bali? First, he's telling a plain justification. So I call it a first J, justification, and then jurisprudence, and third, jurisdiction, right? I'll explain those heavy words, right? First is justification. He's just giving a plain justification. He asked Bali, have you ever hunted in a forest? He said, yes. He said, Bali, have you ever hidden yourself behind a rock or a tree to hunt your target? He said, yes. He said, so you agree that hiding behind a tree or hiding is a valid war strategy, right? He said, oh, yes, I have used it multiple times. So, but Bali said, I don't have a trouble with that. I should be alert enough, because in a war, at times many warriors attack at you. So I should be alert enough, right? But tell me, why did you kill me, right? We don't even know each other, right? Let alone be having any animosity, right? And then Ramchandraji moved to the second J, just jurisprudence, basically the art of establishing a crime, right? Which is currently done by the courts in the modern format, right? He says, when you have kicked Sugriva out, okay, that's adharma itself, but while doing that, you have kept his wife with you. And then there is a lot of shlokas in Valmiki Ramayana that how you should, it's about sanctity of relationship, how you should be towards the wife of your brother. It's almost like your daughter, right? And you have grabbed her and kept her with you. That's like the biggest of the sin. And then there is a whole session on morality for Bali. And the dying Bali finally realized that what I have done is horrendous, right? And so the crime is established. But, the dying Bali is asking a super logical question even then. Though he agrees to his crime. He's saying, I'm very shameful what I've done, and thank you, you realized that. You made me realize that. But he's saying, but who are you to punish me? Like, okay, I've done a crime, but what is your locus standi to even punish me, right? Maybe Rama was her name, Sugriva's wife. Rama can punish me, Sugriv can punish me, the courts of Kishkinda the Nyaya Samitis and the courts of Kishkinda can punish me, but who are you, right? And see, so quite super logical conversation is happening. And then Ramchandra talks about jurisprudence or jurisdiction, that Ayodhya has a tie-up with a lot of the Janpadas, a lot of other boundaries for legal guidance, for war guidance, for protecting the boundaries, and Kishkinda is one of them. And he first time very emphatically stated that I'm still the king, Bharat is still my representative, and I'll make sure in my jurisdiction, in my legal jurisdiction, my legal advisory jurisdiction, adharma cannot happen, right? And wherever adharma has happened, I have to punish the adharma, right? And Bali got so impressed that he say, I'm so happy that I'm getting eliminated with your hands. And he requests with folded hands to Tara, his wife, and his son Angad, that in the rest of your life, you have lived with a dharmic person like me, now be part of the dharmic mission of Rama and Sugriva, right? So this is the conversation that happening between Bali and Rama. Bali got convinced, I think so am I.
Fascinating to learn. There's so much to learn from these stories, and
packed with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and you can sort of it's like peeling the onion one layer at a time, and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into each episode. In the interest of time, I'll jump to one last question that I had, which again, a lot of times feels like a moral dilemma. And our spiritual guide, Daji, Sri Kamlesh Patel, who right now leads the heartfulness practice globally, he often talks about this. He says, and the question that he answers is this concept of free will and destiny versus free will, and where does it play out. And he gives the example. He says Lord Rama's horoscope was analyzed by sage Vashishta. So was Mother Sita's. And he matched it and said, this is the perfect match, this is the best match. Yet if you analyze their marriage, it was fraught with trouble. They got married, they went to Vanvas, she got kidnapped, then they brought her back. He put her through this test of fire, multiple times, not once. And eventually she, out of desperation, just had to pray to Mother Earth to take her back in. And so how do you, again, when you think about, forget heartful leader, but even a heartful human, how do you look at that and say, here is the person that everyone looks up to, but how did he deal with his wife in these circumstances? And what's your insight on that?
So Raviji, after the Bali incident, this is the most contested, the most debated incident in Ramayana. These two, like the Mata Sita's Agni Pariksha, Mata Sita's exile eventually, where she went and lived in Valmiki's ashram, where Love Kush was born, that incident in Vali was, right? So I think my take on this is the following, right? I think first of all, if you read whole of Valmiki Ramayana, from Balakand to Yuddhakand, there are multiple shlokas which very clearly details the love, affection, respect between Ram and Sita for each other, right? In various shlokas, that's during their marriage, after their marriage, in hard times in Vanvasa, there are multiple moments where they are in deep love and affection and respect for each other, right? And Rama did not leave any stone unturned to get Sita back after the kidnapping thing, right? And it was like in those days with that kind of distances, he did not go back to Bharat that, okay, please help me, give me the Sena, the army of Kosala Empire, Ishwaku dynasty. No, he made the local alliances with Kishkinda, with Sugriv, with Hanumanji. He made local alliances and he did what he did. So, and he almost lost his life during the war, right? The war was very, very hard for Rama. So it's not that he is doing this casually, right? He's making every effort to get Sita Mata back, right? Now there are multiple elements. So Sita Mata is back and she lived in Asura state, Asura country, Asura empire for almost 9 months in captivity, right? There can be a blame on her that she is being kidnapped by a men, right? So she lived, she might have lived with the men, she might have lived in what kind of food she ate, what kind of thoughts she imbibed, we don't know. If this might have happened with any other person, right? What might be the rule for that person? What might be the code of conduct for that person? So Rama knew that Sita Mata is pious. He knew internally, he knew by his heart. But he, first of all, he wanted to establish that for the whole of the world, for the sanctity of Mata Sita. I know it, but I don't want to give her a green card, an olive branch for everyone. Otherwise, people will think, okay, she's the wife of the king, separate rules for her, separate rules for the public, right? So, not for her own self, to establish her own Mata Sita's sanctity for the world, right? He did this Agni Pariksha thing. Then they come back to Ayodhya, but again the blames are on. A washerman, a dhobi says, okay, if this were to happen to my wife, I would have thrown her out, right? And then there was a conflicting two dharmas in Rama's head. And you articulated beautifully, like in Indian text, and especially Ramayana and Mahabharata, the special part is that all the conflicts are not between good and bad. And because that's a very easy conflict, right? A good and bad conflict is a very easy conflict, and any rightful person would go towards the good, right? It's a very nuanced. It's a conflict between a good and another good. One dharma versus another dharma, and dharma means not religion, which is a very simple interpretation. It's righteousness, right? One righteousness versus another righteousness. Both are competing, and I think we in our life plays normal multiple dharmas, right? In our family, we are father to someone, we are husband to someone, or for a female, wife to someone, mother to someone, we are colleagues, we are friends, we have a corporate life, we have a personal life, we have a spiritual life. A lot of these dharmas, right? And being true to a particular role is that dharma. Am I being true to my company, which I'm working, which is paying me salary? That's my corporate dharma, or that dharma. Am I being true to my family? That's my parivar dharma. Am I being true to my spiritual journey, the journey of this soul? That's my spiritual dharma. And these dharmas conflict many times in a day, even a scheduling wise, these conflict, right? And then we have to do a smart judgment that which dharma should supersede which dharma, right? And similar situation was in front of Rama, that shall I cater to my parivar dharma or shall I cater to my Raj dharma, right? What will establish the legend for people to come? And he has a precedent when Dashrata, while sending him to Vanvas, Rama to Vanvas, he said, Raghukul Reet Sada Chaliyai Pran Jai Par Vachan Na Jai. I am ready to give my life, but I cannot go back on my promise. If I go back on my promise, then who will follow the legend of promises? Right?
Yeah.
So this was the seat of Ishwaku. This was the seat of Manu. This was the seat of Harishan. This was the seat of many stalwarts who have established truthfulness as a principle of guiding a state, how a king should be. So Rama made this very nuanced judgment, very tough judgment, that let me establish the seat of kingdom. That's how a king should be versus how a husband should be. Right? And he made a very nuanced judgment, and he followed his Raj Dharma and not his Parivar Dharma. A very small addition, which is my own addition, Valmiki Ramayana does not allude to that. When there are almost out of the 24,000 shlokas, there are 100 plus shlokas where I see very deep love and affection and respect in Ram and Sita. Right? To my understanding, and this is, I'm again saying Valmiki Ramayana does not say, this is Shantanu Gupta's explanation. There is a high possibility that this exile of Mata Sita is happening in agreement with Mata Sita. Right? And the conversation might be something like this. They both are thinking, what is big for us? Our own comfort of living with each other, right? Our own happiness of living with each other, or establish this seat of justice of Ishwaku dynasty. Right? Why I'm saying so? Because there's a precedent how deeply in love and affection, respect they are to each other, right? And Rama is waging a whole war to Lanka, right? Just to get Mata Sita back. It's not a small thing, right? It's almost like Chand se tare tod ke lana. It's almost similar to that, right? So there is a conversation between two, and they both agreed, oh, I think, and even Rama is in pain without living. If you see how much in deep love and respect with Sita, he's also in pain for the rest of the life, right? Yeah. Not only Mata Sita. So they are agreeing to this pain to establish the larger purpose of dharma. I think that's my take on that very challenging situation in Ramayana. Right?
It's a beautiful answer, and one of the things I've seen frustrates people a lot, especially as their rank and file in any organization, is that leaders seem to have a set of rules for everyone else and a different set of rules for themselves. Right? It's a common complaint, right? And it's the old, sometimes when leaders speak, they say, okay, what they really mean is say as I say, but do as I say, but not as I do, right? It's so fascinating that it takes a tremendous amount of courage to set the rules and then follow them for yourself, even though you don't have to. That as a heartful leader, I think that's key. And one of the things we talk about a lot is how much somebody's reputation is everything that they have, and then ends up being, detrimental or constructive in what outcomes they can create. And I think this is what you just articulated is exactly what builds that reputation, right? Do you do what you say? And I think that's a tremendous lesson to learn as well. Well, Shantanu ji, it's been such a pleasure to get your insights on that. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with our audience? Any final comments you have in closure?
Yeah. So I think first of all, from the previous example, a lot of the current leaders, someone like Narendra Modi, someone like Yogi Adityanath, right? People may agree them, like them, dislike them. That's a different thing. But this yardstick, we don't even know who their family is versus some other political leaders, and that's win them respect, right? They're not there. Their roots for their family is as good as for any commoner, right? See, the larger lesson from Ramayana, which I understand, it's Raviji, it's a lesson of endurance, right? And just see this journey of 14 years, right? And you alluded to it in the starting, right? That his life is full with troubles and challenges, right? 14 years back, he was about to become the king the next day, the king of Shwaku dynasty, the king of Kosala Empire, the king of Ayodhya, right? And a day before he gets to know, no boy, let alone the king, you are being sent to jungle for 14 years, and he was fine with it, right? And what is he doing in this 14 years? He's meeting more rishis, more gurus. He got guru number 1, Rishi Vashisht. He not guru number 2, Rishi Vishwamitra. But that happened by he did not do work hard for it, right? Then in this 14 years, he's going to one rishi. He's spending 1 day, at times 1 week, at times 1 month, at times 1 year, and that's a detailed description. What is he learning from them? Someone of making his body strong by learning Surya Namaskar, getting new weapons, learning new philosophy of life, learning new statecraft, how to run a state. He's learning all of this, right? But he's not aberrating. He's not getting dishonest. He doesn't know what to eat tomorrow. He doesn't know where will he live tomorrow. He has a newlywed wife, Sita, with him, right? But he's making sure he's not getting dishonest. Why I'm saying dishonest? Because on the way, there are a lot of kingdoms. There are a lot of friendly kingdoms. He can very easily do kingdom hopping from one kingdom to another kingdom and being their guest. But not for a day, he has cheated the Vanvasa Dharma, right? And almost 13 years into the Vanvas, his wife got kidnapped, right? So his kingdom, he lost his kingdom, he lost his wife. And then also he's not cheating. He's not going back to, he's not diluting his Vanvas Dharma. He's making local alliances and making sure he goes to Lanka by a lot of effort and then waging this war. During the war, in the hands of Indrajit, he was almost killed twice. First, Garuda helped him, then Hanumanji helped him, right? So he lost his kingdom, he lost his wife, he was about to lose his life. Can we, if we think of our problems, Raviji, in life, I'm not belittling anybody's problem in life, but just juxtapose your set of problems with these 3 problems. You're losing your kingdom, meaning as soon as you're losing your company or your job, right? You're losing your wife, meaning you're losing your dearest person in your life. You're losing your life, right? Even then, you're not going dishonest. Even then, you're not losing your goodness. Even then you are not losing your honesty and goodness in life. And even then, you are emerging as a leader. Even then, you're emerging as a winner. And that's the biggest story of endurance. Whenever you are in trouble, just think of Rama. Is my problem bigger than Rama's problem? In the end, did he aberrated from the path of Dharma? No. Is my problem bigger than Rama's problem? No. Right? In the end, who won? Rama. After 14,000 years, whom are we talking about? More than 100 countries had the legend of Rama, Raviji. In Thailand, their national book is called Ramakien, Ramayana. Their kings are called Rama 1, Rama 2. The current king is called Rama 10. Indonesia, Islamic country. Huge legend of Ramayana. They have their own Ramayana, Kakabin Ramayana. The UP government is doing a project where they found almost 100 plus countries have some legend of Ramayana in the dance form, food form, in their architecture or some other cultural form, right? So that's why I take Ramayana as the biggest story of endurance, and we as civilization is the only ancient civilization living, right? Rest all are gone. Rest all the world is very new, right? And to our understanding, we learned that endurance from what Rama has taught us 14,000 years back, right? So that's, I think, my lesson, heartfulness lesson from Ramchandraji, that don't aberrate whatever the challenge may come. You will, if you follow the path of Dharma, you will win.
Shantanu ji, that is wonderful. There is nothing to add at the end of that. And I'm sure this has been an amazing session that our audience will enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi ji. Thank you for asking such wonderful questions. Thank you.